Well, hi everyone. We are live. I'll just wait for more people to get here. We're going to start the worm chat. Do you like my background? I'm having coffee. If you're here, comment below so I could say hi to you. This is my first time using StreamYard. I'm live on YouTube and Facebook at the same time. So this should be interesting. Hi, Patrick. How are you? I'm having coffee. So we're going to talk about worms. I know people have lots of questions, and I'll answer them for you. Whatever you want to know about. So this is the first time I'm using StreamYard. I like it. I'm able to put something in the background. I'm not in my wormery right now. I'm in my office because we just installed new lighting in here, and just has better lighting. So you just had coffee too? Yeah. This is my favorite mug. It says I'm spooky all year long. I like spooky things. So for the first time ever, I had two people recognize me in public. And it was funny. I didn't know what to say. I'm like, yeah, that's me. So they looked at me and they're like, are you the worm lady? I'm like, yeah, that's me. So it was pretty cool. I was really excited about that. So who else is here? What do you want to talk about? If you have any questions, leave them below. So before anything else, I know I put a little thing at the top. Thank you for any super chats or super thanks I get. Sometimes I miss them in the comments because I'm answering questions. And one time I had a lot of people show up and I just missed a few. And I'm saying thank you ahead of time in case I miss you. I don't want to miss you. Um, so if you haven't yet, press that subscribe button and subscribe to the Worm Lady too. That's my other channel. I'm trying to get that one more going because that way I could monetize it. Because the more income I make, it goes into my wormery for supplies. Supplies are just outrageous these days. The prices of things are like wow. Well, Patrick, thank you for watching. I appreciate it. I've been worm farming for 22 years now. It's been a long ride. It's been a crazy journey. I've I'm not going to say I've perfected it because I haven't. I still occasionally kill worms. So if that happens to you, don't worry about it. Just try to figure out what you did wrong and then try to fix it and then move on. That's what I do. I used to beat myself up when that happened. Like a bedding would go sour, but I don't do that anymore. It's just not worth it. But that's how you learn. You got to try things. So what do you raise worms, Patrick? This StreamYard, I noticed that it lets me have like guests on here. So next time I go live, I'll see who wants to come on with me and we can talk together. Like it'll let me invite people. I don't know how many, but it'll let me invite people. That's pretty cool. So I don't know. People are watching. Let's see. I think the Garden and Worm Lady is the biggest one. So if my friends from the Middle East are watching. Hi. I have people who watch me from everywhere, and I love it. Let's see. Patrick says, have not got worms, but learning one outdoor garden worms. Yes. So I have a barrel in my garden that has been going for 15 years. And what we did was we took a barrel that would hold fruit juice. I always make sure it's not a barrel that has like chemicals or had chemicals in it. So the fruit juice, we just cut holes at the bottom of it, like with a drill, and we put it in the ground. Not we didn't bury it, but we dug out a little bit of the soil and we placed it on there. And I just started adding like things I found in the woods, like little sticks and leaves and straw and just, anything I could find out there, anything natural. And then I started dumping in the my kitchen waste, and the worms just came naturally. They came from the earth and they came in, composted everything, left me the castings, and then went back into the earth. So they come every spring and then they do their thing all spring, summer, and fall. And then they leave again in the winter when it gets cold. But they leave their cocoons behind. So red wiggler cocoons will survive the winter out there. Blue worms, their cocoons will not. So they kind of like turn to mush in the cold. So they leave their cocoons behind and then the cycle just repeats. And I've been doing this about 15 years and I love it. Well, hi from zone A, 5A. Where is that? I'm in zone 6B here in southern Indiana. Trying to trying to position this. So I've been gardening. This year, I'm probably not going to go in the garden itself. We're going to set up some like pots up here on my deck so that I can garden up here because, I had a knee injury and I'm still recovering. So it's been a process. It's oh gosh. It's going to be a while, so I might as well just get used to it, but I am getting better, so that is a good thing. With anything, including worms, I try to look at the positive side of things. Um, but don't think worm farming is not, it'll never be perfect. It's a lot of hard work too. But you just got to try to do your best, and that's okay. It'll be fine. Canada. Ooh, I heard Bigfoot's up there. For those of you that know me or don't know me, I love Bigfoot. I love everything Bigfoot. I want to see Bigfoot. So I have quite a few hobbies besides Bigfoot and, worms. I crochet, I paint, I have hermit crabs. I do a bunch of stuff. I love having a nice hot cup of coffee in the evening. So what do you want to talk about? Right now, you know that I am bringing back my wormery to full capacity. It's taking me a bit, but it's doable, and I just need to have patience. Well, the worms in your garden are usually earthworms, but when I start adding kitchen scraps and manures to my barrel, the red wigglers show up. They do. You can tell that they're red wigglers because they'll be like a reddish color and they'll have the clitellum, that band. To me, earthworms look they have like a pale look to them. And I think it's because they live in the soil and they probably don't get any sun. But the red wigglers they'll be like a maroon color. And they're of all the worms I raise, they are not my problem child. They're the ones that give me the least problems. So yeah, that's just how it is. So I have them for sale on my website. If you guys want worms, I'll ship them to you. I can't ship to Canada though. I know it's doable, and I there are people that do it, but I believe you have to fill out a bunch of paperwork and stuff like that. And I just don't know how to do it, and I don't want to like just wing it and get in trouble. And yeah, you just can't. I don't know. There are strict laws, and we have to follow them. And I can't ship overseas. I can't ship to other countries. I have people that ask me all the time. I wish I could, but I can't. Oh, you're welcome. If I ever could ship overseas, I've already thought about it. If the law ever changes, I would package them up and I would FedEx overnight them, but the customer would have to pay for that shipping. That's the only way they would ever make it to another country, but it's not possible anyway. And honestly, I don't think that's ever going to change. The laws are very strict and the fines are in the thousands. I don't know if there are people that do it. I really hope not, but it's not I'm not willing to take that chance. So let's see. Hopefully more people show up so we could get more of the conversation going. Let's see. This is the first time I'm using this. I actually love it. They don't. Your red wigglers don't do well in your climate. What's your climate? You keep them indoors like mine. Five. What is your zone? 5A. That's pretty cold, isn't it? It's hard to keep them outdoors in a cold climate in a container that doesn't have holes at the bottom for them to escape and go down into the earth and protect themselves. I know a lot of people do things like they try insulation, they try straw, they try. I've seen so many things. I've seen a lot of crazy things too, where they try to insulate it, and sometimes they do okay, but sometimes they don't. And there are also people that have windrows, which is like these long tunnels of worms, mountains like, and they cover them with straw and leaves and just bedding and just leave them to overwinter. But you see, the windrows don't have bottom. They're not, it's not a contained container. The worms will leave. And then when it warms up in the spring, you keep feeding them, they do return. And what's good about composting outdoors in the winter is if you have blue worms, they don't survive and their eggs don't survive either. So they'll be gone. So that's the one good thing. What I do see sometimes here that the winter also kills is the worm they call the crazy worm, the jumping worm, the Alabama jumper. Um, yeah, they're not good. They're an invasive species and they actually destroy forest floor and they do a bunch of crazy things. And if you look at them, I don't like them. They wiggle away like snakes and that just freaks me out. And they jump and they're just crazy. But we do have them here. I've seen them. I don't see them in abundance though. Of course, when I don't need them, then I can't find them. Well, I see them all the time. And then when I really want to look at one to do like a video on, then I can't find the thing. It seems to like, ooh, there I go. So Patrick says worms have memories. I guess. I always thought if worms could talk, gosh, what would they say about me? They'll probably say she's crazy. I can't help it though. I've been like this my whole life. Hopefully, next time I go live, maybe Joe will join me. He did love all those pastries I got him for his birthday that I had shipped here from Brooklyn. So maybe he'll go live with me. He's funny. I know people like him. He's a comedian. I love him to death. Who else is here? Come on, say hello. Don't be shy. I'm here to answer your questions. So, Okay, my red wigglers are the most calm worms of all. Who do you think comes in second as far as brattiness? Yeah. Aw, thank you, Patrick. I appreciate that. Well, hi, Fernando. How are you? Are you a worm farmer too? I never thought I'd be a worm farmer. It just sort of happened. It was actually a birthday gift from my mom. She's the one that like got me started. But I it took some convincing because she wasn't convinced. I had to like present my case like a lawyer and see if she would fall for it. But she's the one that bought me my first worm factory and my first worms. It was a birthday gift. So who do you think is the second brattiest worms? Aw, that's nice. I would say it's the European night crawlers. I love them. They're robust. They're bigger than the red wiggler, even though they're cousins. But if they're not in the mood for me that day, they show it. Some days they're just calm and they do everything I want. And for the most part, in my wormery, my worms don't escape my bins. And people ask me that all the time. And I had someone ask me that the other day, why don't they leave? Um, well, the only thing I could think of is when your bedding is ideal, they're not going to want to leave. They want to stay in there. So I've learned how to get the bedding exactly how they like it so they don't leave. But every once in a while I'll get one that's like a little stubborn and he'll just take off and I'm like, "Don't go cuz you're going to end up dead on the floor." And it happens. So Jeffrey, you are cultivating your European nightcrawlers outdoors. Yes, European nightcrawlers do very well outdoors. They really do. In your compost pile. That is awesome. Yeah, I think everyone starts with a worm factory. I mean, it's a great product. I love mine. Joe got me mine for Christmas one year, or was it my birthday? I don't remember. We've been together 28 years. There's been a lot of gifts being given back and forth. But anyway, I remember when I opened it, I started crying because I was so happy. And who cries for worms? I do. Me. So I think I've had every container to raise worms possible. I've had the Worm Factory, the Worm Factory 360. I have that frog thing. I have another one that's like a rectangle with a lid that I haven't showed you guys. I don't even know the name of it. Um, yeah, I have quite a few. I have a tumbler outside that I tried raising worms in. That did not go well. Different breeds, different types can do well living together. Sure. Yeah. I have on my channel the worm lady too. And by the way, if you're not subscribed to that channel, please do and watch my videos. I'm trying to raise those 4,000 watch hours, man. It is hard. But anyway, in there, um, in that barrel I call Woodstock because everyone lives in harmony. They all do well. They just do. Um, I don't know. They do well in there. I've never had a problem, but yet I don't have blue worms in there at all. So if there were blue worms in there, like I don't know what would happen because none of my bins have lids on them, and I don't think I would ever raise blue worms without some kind of lid with a mesh with like tape on it or something because they will go flying. They will. They will. That's just how they are. Now, for there are people that love blue worms, and for composting abilities, they have the incredible ability. They do. But man, they're a pain in the butt sometimes when they want to take off. Oh, You put oak leaves. Yeah, worms love all kinds of leaves. They do. But I will say the darkest castings I've ever gotten was when I feed leaves. But I don't just take the leaves and bring them indoors and throw them in my bin. What I do is I soak them in water that's been treated with mosquito dungs, but I use very hot water and I let it sit for a while and then I drain that water. Once I drain that water, I rinse the leaves again and then I feed it to the worms. And I do that to prevent any little bugs or anything to coming in. So yeah, I didn't do that one year. This was about, I don't know, 10 years ago. And I just threw the leaves in the bin and I didn't know that there were snails on them. And I had an entire colony with my worms of little snails with the little shells. Not the slugs that you see in the garden. These are the ones with the little shells. They were the cutest things ever. But I couldn't get rid of them. I tried everything. Everything. So I ended up harvesting the worms. I had to rinse them. Always rinse your worms when you're going to harvest them out of something that had bugs in it. And then I had to disinfect the container and put fresh bedding and then I reintroduced my worms. Man, that was so crazy. That was crazy. So anytime you have bugs of any kind in your bin that you don't want, harvest them, rinse them, obviously with not ice water and not boiling water. We're going to do just regular water and then introduce them back. That quick rinse is not going to hurt them. And you'll save yourself a giant headache. Um, it just is what it is. But you have to remember the composting world is huge and it's an entire microsystem, microbiology system, ecosystem of everything in there. And there will always be certain bugs that are always going to be present and you can't get rid of them, like potworms. They're always going to be there. Always. Little springtails, they'll always be there. Now these two things, springtails and potworms, don't hurt the worms. So I just leave them. Now there are ways to reduce their numbers, but I just leave them. Man, that coffee's good. Oh, I'm glad you like the idea. Thank you. So what else do you guys have any other questions? Let me see. Okay. I scrolled. So we'll see next time I do this if I could get someone to um, come on here with me. I live in hi Tracy. I live in southern Indiana, but Joe and I are originally from the Northeast. We're from New Jersey and we live in southern Indiana. Zone 6B. We do have winters and we have all the seasons here. And I absolutely love it here. It's so pretty and quiet. Well, there you are, Mr. Handy Geek. I was thinking about you and Vanessa the other day. So, Handy Geek, the Handy Geek, there he is. He's the one that bought Woodstock last year when I harvested all the worms from the Woodstock bin, which I have back, by the way. He's the one that bought the worms from that bin. Yeah, he got them all. Sales are okay. They're a little slow, but they're okay. I know spring is just starting. It'll get busy and then it'll get busy through the summer. And then, believe it or not, sometimes I get busier in the winter and the fall. I watch the temperatures very closely because if the weather, if I think the worms are not going to make it, I don't ship them. I'll message you and I'll tell you I'm going to wait, because the last thing I want is for them to die because they overheat or something. Now, there's another worm farmer, Missouri Worm Supply. He actually gave me a tip, and New Soil Casting, Bobby, he gave me a tip. So people are shipping using these little ice packs that you can freeze and put in the box with some insulating material, and that way you can ship all summer. So it's a great idea, Mr. Handy Geek. If you want to talk about that, you can message me and I'll tell you about it. But it's a way to ship worms in the summer when the temperatures are extreme, and it gives them a better chance of, survival and getting there alive. I rarely have any dead on arrivals though. It happens sometimes, but not really. And if it does happen, I always just work with the person. I'll either refund or send them new worms or whatever they want to do. It's not a major issue. Okay, let's see what he said. Sometimes you move everything, leaving a space that you add dry bedding, and I thought it would be too dry. Leaving a space that you add dry bedding. I'm not sure what that means. You mean in shipping? You like that idea? Yeah, it's an idea. I'll tomorrow I can text you the picture of the insulating thing I got for the boxes. Comes in big rolls and you just cut it to size. I'm working on the starter colonies. I'm working on them because I like them to be a starter colony. And they're just about there, because when I ship a starter colony, I wanted to have everything that I would want mine to have, like more microbial life in it. That starter colony thing was not my original idea. I learned it from a worm farmer, or he's actually a biologist named Bentley, and he came up with that idea, and I think it's a great idea. I call it the affordable way to worm farm. So, what is Baba Booey? Electric Boogaloo. That is a cool name. I remember that from the 80s. That was a cool movie. So starter colonies, I ship them by the pound, and the only thing it was with starter colonies is you got to have patience, because the little cocoons that are included, yes, yes, Breaking Two, I remember. I love those movies. The starter colonies will have cocoons in them, and cocoons usually take about it depends, about a month to hatch. So you got to just keep them moist. Of the bedding that sometimes feed the top, then cover, but no water. You can try it, see what happens. Yeah, you could try it. Right now, I'm doing the migration on the Worm Lady 2 on the Woodstock container. I'm doing the sideways migration, and they migrated. They're starting to migrate faster than what I thought they were going to do. And when I looked, it was the African night crawlers that are making the first move. And I honestly thought it would be the European night crawlers. And so far, the red wigglers are staying put on their side. So, yeah. Yeah, it is a more foolproof way to worm farm. When you add a lot of wet food, you don't need to add extra food, like extra moisture to your bin, because sometimes the food will start fermenting and it creates moisture, and then that wets your bedding. But I always run my bins on the wet side a little bit. I just do. I notice that worms do better when they're more moist, but you have to be careful, because if you add too much water, you don't want the water sitting at the bottom, and then they can possibly drown because they do breathe through their skin. So Get a starter colony and a quarter pound to get very fast. Yes, that's the way to go. Remember, the number one thing that will kill your worms, guys, is lack of moisture. If you don't have moisture, they will be gone. Now, when I had COVID the first time, a couple of years ago, it almost killed me. I didn't see my worms for 2 months and I thought, oh my gosh. And, Joe wanted to tend to them, but then he was more worried about making sure I was alive than the worms, which naturally, he's my husband. But when I finally made it downstairs to see them, I couldn't believe that they were still alive, but they were thin, but they were alive. So what they did was they ate all their bedding and everything. And, and they were okay because I was keeping those beds moist and covered before I got sick. And I think that's what saved them. Without that, I don't know. You're trying to get into worm farming. I'm trying to find a good source for worms. I've been doing research, watching videos, reading, talking to local extension. Okay. Well, I'll ship them to you if you go on my website. One thing I can say is my worms are pure. I don't know about anybody else. I haven't seen the others, but mine are. Yeah, moisture. Moisture is the best tip when it comes to worms. Now, let's talk about the forbidden foods. Okay. There's a lot of stuff out there that says that you shouldn't feed onions and garlic and peppers. Well, let me tell you, my worms eat everything. They just do. I'm a cook. I Did I ever tell you guys I cooked in a county jail that was run more like a prison for like 4 years? Well, anyway, I was the head cook, and I learned to cook when I was like 10 years old, and I've been cooking for like 40 years. So I always have a lot of scraps, and my worms just eat everything. I don't know how much my starter colonies are going to be yet because I haven't put them up for sale yet. I have to look at their the quality and just see if they're up to the standard that I like. I just won't sell them if they're not to the I don't know, to the starter colony that I like. I just won't. I just won't just throw it out there because it's not right. Um, I'm about doing the right thing. I can't speak for others, but I can speak for myself. So my worms eat everything. They just do. And but do I feed onions and garlic on a regular basis, like all the time? No. But occasionally I've thrown in an orange. I've been downstairs in the wormery eating an orange, and I've taken the peel and I've thrown it in the worm bin, and they eat it too. As long as you don't dump like a whole pound of onions or a bunch of oranges you've eaten in there, I mean, one is not going to hurt them. It's really not. The secret is to not add too much of these foods or you don't have enough worms to handle it. Oh, yeah. Oh, my gosh. Yes. So I made the mistake one time of, I don't know if you saw the bin. I did it to a bin of African night crawlers. I thought, well, they're big. They'll be able to handle it. It'll be okay. I'll just add all this food oh my gosh. The bin went anaerobic. And anaerobic, for those of you that don't know, it means it rotted, but in a bad way. It didn't have good bacteria. It had the really bad bacteria. And when I walked in my worm room, immediately I smelled something. And I'm like, I know that smell. I'm like, oh no. So you've seen my entire wall of worms. I had to figure out where it was coming from. So I started going through my bins, and it was two of them. And I'm like, oh my gosh, what went wrong? So immediately I got them off. I put gloves on and I put a mask. Even with the mask, after I started working with them, I had to walk away because I was going to throw up. I swore I was. It was awful. And what I had to do was, so what do you do when your bin goes anaerobic, and it can happen to anyone. I mean, these are just mistakes. I had to rescue the worms, I had to rinse them. I had to throw all that stuff out and fresh bedding. And of course, they're African night crawlers, so they don't like to be messed with too much. So I had to sit with them for a while. And every time one would try to escape, I had to like push it in and encourage it to go back in. It was horrible. You remember that bin? I think I had texted you like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? So it was bad. It was really bad. And, but it was my mistake. It wasn't the worm's fault. They just reacted to me, almost killing them. So, but it happens. It happens occasionally. I got complacent, and that's something that you don't do. But I've been doing this 22 years. So sometimes I just get a little brave and I try something new, and then things like that will happen. So, but they made it. The worms survived. I couldn't believe it. Nobody had protein poisoning. Nobody had anything. So I never did that again, though. I never did. Yeah, it's how we all learn. We all learn that one. I have a video on that because the minute that happened, I got the camera because I thought this is such a good learning experience for others, so you don't do the same things I did. And it was pretty bad. Messing up makes you a better work farmer, probably. So I've tried a lot of things, and sometimes they work out great, and then sometimes they don't. So the same thing. Let's say you order some worms, and I'm only telling you because this happened to me. Um, and you get them, and they're sick. Like you think they're sick, like the bedding smells rotting, like something's wrong. Was that because you didn't fluff it up to add air? That was because I didn't fluff it up, but I added an excessive amount of food and I left them alone with it. And yeah, so when you're breeding worms, you only need about 3 inches of bedding. So can you imagine 3 inches of bedding, these huge African night crawlers, and this amount of food? Of course, it was a time bomb ready. So one time I got worms and they arrived and they were kind of funky. I smelled something in the bedding. I'm like, they were kind of lethargic. I've never seen that. They were like limp, and I'm like, oh, something's wrong with these worms. So I immediately had to become Dr. Mom, Dr. Worm Mom. So I immediately got them out of that bedding. I rinsed them with nice water, and then I had to well, I had their bedding ready to go in my new bin, but I didn't expect them to arrive like that. So I kind of made, instead of putting them in the original bedding that I had made in a container, I took half the bedding that I had prepared and I put other fresh bedding in there and I mixed it up. I kind of made, like, I guess I would call it a hospital bedding. So I made this hospital bedding and I had them in there for a bit. And then once I thought they recovered, which they did, then I moved them to my main bin. And the reason I did that is because since I suspected something was up, I didn't want to add them to my main bin and then have them mess up the entire thing, or, or just die in there because then it would have been a lot of work. So that's what you do. And, these things sometimes can happen. You don't know. These things happen. So it could be the weather, it could be anything. So what the other forbidden foods? Okay, oh boy, this is a good question. So meats and dairies and bones. So I never feed dairy, but in my outdoor bin in my garden, my worm barrel out there, I do feed meat and bones and dead animals that I find on my property. So we live on land here. And every once in a while, I don't know if it's my garden, they just come to die here. So we get them. Oh, hello from Alaska. Hi, I love Alaska. I would love to go there. So I pick up these dead animals. Usually my daughter will do it for me. I wouldn't do it. And we put it in the worm barrel. And what I do is I take the stuff in the barrel aside and I put the animal in there and I bury it. And they compost meat and the bones. They even eat the hair and everything. Now I would never do that indoors ever because it could smell weird. It could go anaerobic. You could attract flies. Now, dairy, I've never put dairy in my worm bin. I don't put oil, um, never put vinegar, anything like that. But as far as meat, outdoors, sure, they take care of it. If you think about it, with all the dead animals that die out there, the worms are the ones that take care of the bodies, the worms and the flies, and one time I put a dead, I think it was a dead raccoon in the worm barrel, and I left it. But curiosity got the best of me, and I had to see what the worms were actually doing. So what they did was I moved the animal aside with a stick because there was no way I was touching it. And the worms were coming up from the earth through the bottom of my barrel, which has holes in it, and they were penetrating the animal from the inside. So basically, they ate it from the inside out. And I noticed they do that with the pumpkins. They go in between the flesh and the skin of the pumpkin and they eat it like that. Isn't that crazy? But yeah, yeah, outdoors is a whole different ball game. But so my worm barrel, it has a lid outside, but I don't lock it. And so far, the raccoons, they don't bother it. So I don't know if they ever will. But I wouldn't leave it open, like, even though I have a compost pile out there, when I put stuff in my compost pile, which is just like open, I bury it, and so far nothing's bothered it. But you never know. I live here where there's coyotes and raccoons and all these animals that run around, and maybe one day they'll want to invade my garden over there. But so far, so good. This is my mug, my favorite mug. I'm spooky all year long. So people call them the forbidden foods because it's something that you shouldn't feed in abundance, but I think you can feed. Chicken feed is another one that a lot of people like to feed. But chicken feed can be high in protein, so you have to be very careful when you feed chicken feed. I don't feed it ever in excessive amounts, and I always mix my chicken feed, or they call it also chicken crumbles. I mix it with other things when I make my worm chow. I've done experiments with it, and they love it. But you can get protein poisoning. You like the background? It's a green screen. This thing, I'm on StreamYard, and it lets me pick different backgrounds, and that's actually a close-up picture of my worms. So yay, they're here with us. Yay. I'm here live in my office because Joe put some track lighting for me, and it just it just looks better. We have better lighting here. So, yeah. How's your wife? Is she doing okay? Handy geek? How's Vanessa? How's your family? Yeah, chicken crumbles, top feeding only. My worm chow, I only surface feed. And the reason is, if you, let's say you put the worm chow on the surface and then you water it, you're going to be watering it down into the bedding. And I know there are some people that mix the worm chow into the bedding. I don't personally like doing that because I have done that and I caused protein poisoning in my own worms one time. Okay. Yeah, we can talk. So yeah, I don't do it. I mean, it might not happen every time, but then there'll be that one time that it will happen. And have you ever seen protein poisoning in a worm? It is one of the saddest sights you will see. They also call protein poisoning string of pearls because they actually look like a string of pearls. Like their body pinches and then there'll be a ball and then they'll pinch and there'll be a ball. It is so sad and they don't make it. They don't. It's because it creates gases in their body because that worm chow or whatever the excessive amounts of protein ferments and causes gases in them and this is what causes. I saw a worm one time where it had protein poisoning, but instead of the whole body becoming the string of pearls, its head inflated. It's like it had a gigantuan head, and I'm like, what the heck? I've never seen that. But yeah, it is a sad thing to see. So I try to avoid things like that. And if it happens to you, don't be sad, don't worry. Just try to figure out what you did and then just not do it again. So I always wet first and then sprinkle. Sometimes I sprinkle and then do a little wet, but I never like really mix it in. And I don't know, some people do it and everyone does it their own way. I just try to teach you what works for me and what catastrophes I have caused because I don't want you to do the same thing. I really don't. It's very sad when it happens. Did it happen to you, the handy geek? Have your worms had protein poisoning? I don't remember. So if you guys want to give me a super chat, super thanks, you can do that in I don't know where. I guess YouTube. Any super thanks that do super chats go towards the supplies of my worm farm. My YouTube monetization goes towards the supplies of my worm farm. Guys, supplies are so expensive these days. It's like I can't believe it. Like the price of oh, thank you. Someone gave me a heart. Yay. The price of peat moss has doubled. How much is the peat moss by you, Handy Geek? You're in Georgia, right? We used to pay, I think it was $12 for 3 cubic squares. I think that block thing is called. Now it's 24 something. And we use peat moss to ship worms. So, and for the majority of the bedding. So I've been trying to use peat moss and coconut coir. I've been trying to use a mix. I've been trying to use more shredded cardboard and shredded paper from my shredder just to try to, you know, balance it out to so I don't have to use 100% peat moss because it's so much money. Yeah, the forbidden foods are like a treat, or the chicken crumbles are like a treat. Oh, thank you. Thank you, Handy Geek. So if you guys want to check out each other's channels, go ahead. Thank you for the super chat or super thanks. It doesn't tell me which one it is. Well, hello, LP. Yeah, the price of everything has gone up. I haven't used rice hulls in the bedding, but I'm sure you can. Just have to be careful with rice, though. Rice tends to heat up a bedding. Yeah, I did that one time, and I had to make some major changes and fast. I fed actually cooked rice. Cooked rice. I mixed into my Worm Factory 360. And all of a sudden, I went to check on my worms because I look at my worms several times a day. I don't know about you, but I do. And I'm like, man, this bin is hot. I'm like, what's going on? And when I opened it, the bedding was so hot. And the worms, they were red wigglers and they started to crawl up the walls. And I'm like, oh my gosh, what's happening? And well, the rice started fermenting and heating up the bin, and they almost went running. Like I had to fluff it up every couple of minutes, and I had to put The only thing I could find were those paint sticks that you mix the paint with, those sticks. I had to put it in between the layers of the Worm Factory 360 to cool it off. And like every 5 minutes, I had to fluff it up. And man, I never did that again. Now, if I feed rice, if I want to, I'll only put a little bit on the surface. Yeah, it heated that thing up like I had never seen, and it was fast. It was fast. Once it started fermenting, that was it. It went. Yeah, cooked rice, leftover. It was true. It was leftover white rice. But if you try the same thing with like a piece of Wonder Bread, like a piece of white bread, it's the same thing. You can put it on the surface, and when that starts fermenting, and it'll ferment, you wet it down, and it'll start heating everything up, and you'll see. But never, guys, never mix it into your bedding. If you're not home and that thing starts fermenting, you'll come home and they'll be everywhere. You'll have a mission. You'll have a worm rescue of the century. Oh, you're welcome. Yeah, anything starchy that will happen with, like potatoes. I do feed my worms potato skins though, but I always freeze them first. I freeze them, and then that doesn't seem to happen. The only thing about potatoes is, um, well, thank you, Jennifer, from the heart. She gave me a heart from Facebook. The only thing with potatoes is that they just take a long time to break down. Like, have you? I know you all have put an avocado skin in the worm bin. Takes forever. They'll eat the avocado inside out. The seed will be there. Your seed will sprout. Guaranteed it'll sprout. All my avocado seeds sprout. But the skin, it takes forever. And it dries up and turns kind of crumbly. So when I see it, I just break it up with my fingers and I just throw it back in there, and it just eventually it'll disappear. So yeah, fruits and veggies, surface. Even though when I do feed fruits and veggies, I do bury my food, but I do it in alternating corners. I never feed in one corner and then feed again in that corner. I'll go to another corner and vice versa. Usually, when it's a square, there's four corners. I add a fifth one in the middle, but another tip for you is I never feed again until I see that the original food is gone. So when I feed in a corner, I'll go back like, I don't know, 4 or 5 days later. And thank you. Freezing your worm food is another great tip. Yes, absolutely. Freeze your worm food because it helps to break it down and it kills any potential of fruit flies. So that is a tip, especially on fruit. So when I feed in the corner, I bury it, right? And then I go back a few days later and I look in there. If there's still food in there, I don't feed them. I wait again a couple of days and then I'll go back and then I'll feed in another corner. So I always like to mark my corners with something. Like I'll put a little piece of cloth or a little piece of like damp paper towel, just something to mark the corners because guys, sometimes I've gone back and I can't remember which corner I put the food in. I just can't because well, there's so many bins. I just can't. So another thing I do as a worm farmer, and I know that, well, most commercial worm farmers don't do this, but I do feed my breeders food scraps. I do. Thank you for the super chat. You guys are so sweet. I do feed my breeders food scraps. I think it's important that they have some diversity in their diet because I think when they have diversity in their diet, they're going to give you better castings and their health will be better. So, can you imagine just eating corn all day, every meal? They need different things too. I don't know. Someone had commented something that my worm chow is only corn, or that's why the worms are fat. No, it's not true. If you've seen me make my worm chow, you see everything I put in it. There's no major secret. They're fat because I feed them well and I keep them wet. Moisture is what keeps your worms nice and plump. I run my breeder bins about 80% moisture. Yeah. Sometimes I'm a little daredevil with the water. So, but that's how they like it. That's how I keep them nice and plump, you know? You use a piece of plastic lid. Yeah. Yeah, a little plastic lid. I know. Hey, how are you? Look who's here. I'm so glad you're here, Brian. Brian watches me on all my channels. His comments are the best. Sometimes, yes, people use plastic things to mark the corners. They'll use a little lid of a Tupperware or sometimes a leaf, but then the leaf is gone. So you can use anything. But I forget where I mark my food. I just do sometimes. Yeah, pretty soon. Well, it's spring here, and the trees are starting to get leaves now. And in the autumn, if you look back at one of my videos, my autumn videos, I mean, it rains leaves here. I have leaves. I have so many leaves. It is unbelievable. And my worms take full advantage of that. They love it. They love it. They love it. And my hermit crabs, they're going to eat leaves too. They like it as a substrate. So if you guys haven't pressed that subscribe channel, go ahead and do so and subscribe to the Worm Lady 2. That's my other worm channel. I'm trying to bring that one up to monetization level just to help me out a little bit with all these worm supplies fees I have to pay. So supplies are not cheap. That is for sure. It is unbelievable. And I try to get bargains, you know. All my containers you see down there, I've got them on sale. I try not to pay full price for anything. If I see a sale or a deal and I need it, I get it. Yes, and hit that like button and give me the thumbs up. You know, YouTube watches those things because it shows me in my analytics and then they tell me whether the video did well or not. So I love YouTube. I've been on YouTube for a long time, even before I started making my own videos. I mean, I just learned so much on YouTube. Is yeah, I've learned everything on here. So the leaves, what I do is I gather them up and I put them in my utility tub downstairs and I plug the little hole and I fill up the tub with really hot water, like hot water. I add a mosquito dunk in there and then I let them sit for a while in the hot water because that hot water will kill all the little snails and little things that come in. And I leave it for a couple of hours. I drain that water. I rinse the leaves really well, and then I feed it to the worms. The worms will love the leaves if they're wet. They love them when they're wet. I noticed the African night crawlers and the European night crawlers love to gather under the leaves when they're really soaking wet. And then you'll be killing any little insects or little things that might crawl in. Sometimes I crumble them up with my hands and put them in the bin. Sometimes I just layer them just like that. The darkest castings I've ever gotten was when I fed leaves. And again, it's diversity for the worm's diet. Yeah, you can freeze your leaves. The handy geek, you freeze it. Yeah, we can freeze them too. Sometimes I don't have room in my freezer. Yeah, you can freeze your leaves. But you in Georgia, do you get a lot of leaves down there? Because I get leaves like I could the whole state of Indiana's in my backyard. We do. We get a lot of leaves. And the worms love it. The worms love it. Worms in buckets, food turns it. Yeah, gluggy and yuck. Should bedding be added to the bucket to stop this? Yeah, absolutely. But if your bedding in a bucket turns like it stinks, like it smells, you should change it because it'll go anaerobic on you and it'll happen fast. I mean, it can happen overnight and then you won't know. And then all of a sudden you'll be like, what's that smell? And then you'll have to go find it. And it'll probably be that you get a ton of leaves. Good. So the best way to raise African night crawlers is in a bucket. They just like it. They do well. Let's do a guess here. How many African night crawlers can you put in a bucket to breed? Any guesses? Any guesses? It's like ice rain here now. Where are you, Brian? Yes, yes, Tracy, you are the winner. 50, 50 African night crawlers to a bucket. Never 500. Never. That would be really bad. We're talking just like a regular, like a bucket, like a gallon bucket, or like one of those Home Depot buckets. Those 50. Next time I do a live video, I'm going to teach you on how to figure out square footage of a bin and how many worms to put in your breeder bins. Because a lot of people want to breed worms. You're in okay, I see. Wow. It's finally it's finally spring here for the most part. Some days we still get a little coldness. For the most part, though, it's spring here. Chill morning. The mornings are still a little chilly, but the rainy season hasn't started, and it'll probably be later in the summer, and or it just starts raining every day. Rain, 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 rain. So it's hard for me to get to the garden. But this year, I'm going to garden up on my deck. Joe's going to set up some pots for me because I can't go down to the garden because of my knee. And there are castings that need to be bought out of that bucket. So that barrel I have out there. So we're probably going to do that and just refill it with bedding. And then the worms will come and do their thing. They're almost like self-sufficient out there. I don't have to worry about them. It's all natural. Any animal I put that I find dead on our property in there, they eat it. Um, it's funny because they eat everything. I have put animals in there and the bones are gone. So I'm like, where are the bones? And then there's other times where I have found like a jaw. And yeah, I have a greenhouse out there that has all the animal bones I have found from the worms in like a little bucket out there. I just collected them there. Just it's so strange that they do that. But if you think about it, when animals die out in the wild, I mean, the maggots are not the only things that eat it. All kinds of predators, including the worms, they come up from the earth and they help take care of it. Yeah, Mother Nature interferes with punching it at work. Mother Nature will always know what to do. You just can't interfere. But my worms in the garden are self-sufficient. Trees mine minerals for us, so feed the leaves for sure. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you for your super chat and super thanks. I wish I knew what it was. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Yeah, my worms, they just and every type of worm I've raised, they all go crazy for the dried leaves. They love it. They love it. I spray wet them down. I sprinkle it in there. Yeah. It's just when I soak my leaves with really hot water, I drain that water and I rinse them really well before put in the worm bin. Because I told you a couple of years ago I didn't do that, and I had a whole colony of little snails. They're super chats. Oh, thank you. Well, because I'm on StreamYard, it doesn't show me like which one it is. Probably show me later on YouTube. So one year I didn't wet the leaves and I just put them in there dry. And a few days later, I had an entire colony of little snails with the little shells on their backs. Not slugs, those slimy long things. These were little snails with the little shells, and they were tiny, and they were the cutest things ever, ever. They reminded me of the little snail from SpongeBob. I don't remember his name, but they were cute. But I couldn't get rid of them. I tried diatomaceous earth. I tried everything. I ended up harvesting the bin, rinsing the worms, throwing all the bedding out, which had cocoons in it. Everyone went and starting from scratch. It's the only way I got rid of them. But that was because I neglected to soak the leaves in hot water. I'm back. I was drinking coffee and I went I went down the wrong pipe. My gosh. Yes, I'm okay. I had to go get water and then I checked on my dogs while I was there. Yeah, it goes down the wrong pipe. I think because I talk too much. But it was just coffee. It wasn't like anything, you know. It was my I'm spooky all year mug. But I switched to water. This is my Pirates of the Caribbean cup. Look at the face. There it is. We got this in Tennessee. What did I miss? Yes, I'm okay. I'm okay. Private feeding of worm chow. You don't do worms, Brian? I thought you did some. Yeah, I know people that no, I won't inhale the water. I know people that go around to restaurants and they give them food scraps and then they feed that. Um, I don't do that because I cook a lot and I usually have a lot of food scraps. Well, go enjoy your dinner. Say hi to Vanessa. We'll catch up. We'll catch up. I know she's a good cook, so I know what you're gonna eat must be really good. Thank you for your super chats. I appreciate it. Gary, that's right. His little snail's name is Gary. I couldn't remember his name. Well, I had an entire family of Gary in my worm bin because I didn't soak the leaves properly. That was my own fault, you know. I should have done it, but I don't know why I didn't. I just, when you do this a long time, sometimes you get complacent. And that's what I did. So, but it's all right. I never did it again. And I didn't have that problem. Do you guys have any other questions? Do you want me to go live more? Do you need more like notice? I also thought about doing memberships and then we could just go live video for members only. I don't know. What do you all think? Tell me what you think. Let's see. The Garden and Worm Lady has 8 people. So do you guys have any other questions? How many red wigglers do you think you should put in a container for breeding? Now people do all kinds of numbers, but I'll tell you what I've done that works for me. Or maybe I should leave that question for nah, I'll tell you. Oh, I'm reading your comment, Tracy. Doctor says it's from years of acid reflux. Oh gosh. I had a lot of acid reflux when I was pregnant with my kids. Once I had them, it went away. So 200. So red wigglers, you should do 250 red wigglers to a container. Like you see the mortar bins that I have, 250. If you overfill breeding containers, it's kind of like they think they don't have space, so they don't breed as well because they don't want to overpopulate the bin. So worms will always self-regulate. Um, if they think that they're gonna not have room for themselves, they will die off. Some will die off. They will always um, make enough babies to fit in the bin. So that's why we also harvest the cocoons every 21 days. It's for that reason. But in a bin, I put 250 red wigglers. And how many do you think for European night crawlers? Now think about like a middle number. So for European night crawlers, I put 150. So it's always, yeah. Oh yeah. They will self-regulate. Isn't that amazing though? It is, because how do they know, But they do. So 50 African night crawlers to a container, 150 European night crawlers to a container, or 250 red wigglers to a container. Now, I've also raised Louisiana swamp worms. And the Louisiana swamp worms, I do the same thing as the red wigglers. I do about 250 per container. They are about the same size. The only difference is they are, I tried to get some, but the guy I get them from is out. They are like a maroon color. They're darker red than a red wiggler. But as far as behavior, they behave the same. They're well, they behave well. They're not the naughty ones. Yeah, they behave well. And but I tried to get some to put in the wood bin, and I couldn't get him. He's out. He's out, and I'm not sure when he'll have some. So if I ever get them, I'll put them in there. I tried to get them for the Woodstock bin, but oh well. You don't do worms anymore. Working on my hobby, helping people. I hope. I think you do. I think you help a lot of people. Your comments are great, Brian. They really are. I always enjoy them. They brighten my day when I'm having a bad day. And, we all have bad days. There are some days everything goes great in the worm room, and there are some days that I just have, one thing goes wrong after another. And it's usually not the worms, it's usually stuff that I do. Like I'll spill something, or I'll forget to buy something I need, or something will break, or, it's always like something of my own doing. The worms just do their thing, and. So swamp worms are Louisiana swamp worms. They're like a cousin to the red wiggler. Same thing. It's a composting worm. There's a guy I buy swamp worms from in the south, and I don't know if he even has them anymore. He's older, and I'm not sure if he's retired, but they're just another fun worm to work with, and they behave just like a red wiggler. So the funniest thing I've ever gotten are the Alaskan ice worms. You can. You can keep them in the same general area separate. Yeah. But remember, they if you keep them too close, one might crawl out and go visit the other one. So if you want them, like, if you want to keep the species separated, I would separate them. But yeah, I had a container of two European night crawlers like this, and I noticed the slime just was like this over the edge of the bin, and I know that they were going back and forth, and I didn't know, naughty children. So so the ice worms. So I went through a phase where I called them my eBay adventures. So I would go on eBay and buy worms and just see what I got, and we would play with them. So I saw an advertisement for, and I can't find them anymore, Alaskan ice worms, and I'm like, "Ooh, what's that?" I had to see what they were, and I received these little worms. They were like little red worms. They were like red wigglers, but they arrived in a PVC pipe covered with um like a cloth and a rubber band around it. When I pulled that out, I swear I thought it was a bomb. I got scared. I'm like, what in the world is this? So, but that's how he shipped them to me, and they did fine. Go figure, right? But that was so funny. And I think the guy who sold them to me, I think he retired too. He was older guy, but PVC pipe. Yep. It was like this big. It was about 6 or 7 inches, and they were stuffed in there. And yeah, I had never seen that, but I don't know. I guess he had a lot of PVC pipe sitting around, and I guess he didn't know what to do with it. So, yeah, why not? Tiger worms are just another like word for a red wiggler, composting worm. They call them tiger worms, red wigglers, manure worms. They're just different. They're just the same thing. It's just some red wigglers have, you'll see little stripes on them, and some don't. Like you see my picture up here. Sometimes they have little stripes on them, and some of them don't. Around here, they call them manure worms. If you could put your experience in a bottle, oh my gosh. Will different worms interbreed? I don't believe so. I've never seen it. 6 or 7 hot dogs. Man, that's my husband. You see that comment, Joseph Calantonio? That's my husband. That's a joke between us. No, they don't interbreed. I've had different species in the bin, like I have in the Woodstock bin on the Worm Lady 2 channel, and no, they don't interbreed. Um, I've heard that red wigglers and blue worms do, and their cocoons are sterile. But again, I'm not even sure if that's true. I've heard a lot of crazy things. So everyone in the comments, say hi to Joe. That's Joseph Calantonio. Yeah, he's watching. Hi, Joe. Hopefully he'll when I do another live, he'll come with me. And then you guys could ask him questions. I've always wondered what happens if worms interbreed if they could. Like what would a worm of an African nightcrawler with a European nightcrawler look like? Will it look more like the African nightcrawler, or will it look like the Euro? Or will it be like an extra large worm? Can you imagine? That'd be pretty cool. Hi. Bye, Brian. Italiano. Yeah, Joe's Italian. My husband's Italian. Did you guys watch Joe eating the Italian pastries for his birthday? He loved them. Yeah, I bought 12 because I thought they were going to be little, and I ended up buying 12. I thought the cakes were going to be, like that, and they ended up being like this. They were huge. Brian saying hi. So many people seem concerned about the purity of their stock. Not a criticism, just curious. That's because of what happens to blue worms, like their behavior. Some people don't want them in their bin because they're like the naughty child of the worm family, and also because they can't they don't live in the winter outside. How do I get more in the camera? Okay. So in the winter outside, blue worms will die, their cocoons melt, they turn to mush. Their behavior, they can just be a crazy type of worm, and people don't like them because of that. Now, as far as their composting ability, they can compost for you. And some people love them, but I think because of the annoyance, people don't want them in their mix. And also, what happened with the blue worm is um people lying about them. That's what started this whole thing. Um People were selling their red wigglers saying they were pure stock, and they had blue worms mixed in, and they weren't being honest with their customers. So people were getting really mad. And if you buy red wigglers from me, I'm sending you red wigglers. If blue worms ever got mixed in my stock, I mean, I would sell them as a mix. And I do have red wigglers mixed with blues for sale on my website, but they come from a supplier. They're not mine. And the reason I sell them on there as from my supplier is because there are people that message me that want them. So I'm like, okay. So that's what it is. I think it's the fact that people were lied to and they don't like it. So after that happened, a lot of worm farmers, or some, started putting a small disclaimer at the bottom of their website saying may contain blue worms, or may contain 10% of blue worms, or something like that. So, but I've always told people, just be honest. Just be honest. Who cares? The average person buying worms is for composting. So that's the reason. That's the honest truth. And it started years ago, and the blue worm thing just spread like wildfire. And some people just, I don't know, they just take it and they go crazy with it. So, yeah. But it took me a long time to get my red wigglers pure because I had to pick out the blue worms and get rid of them. And this was, it took me years to get them to where I have them now. But there are people that buy the blue worms mixed with the reds from me. They just like them. They like the way they compost, so they're happy with them, and that's okay with me. That's perfectly okay with me. So if you haven't shared the live, please do. I really appreciate it. And thank you again to the Handy Geek for his super chats. I really appreciate it. Yeah, I don't know if Joe is still on, but Tracy says hi. Do you guys have any other questions? My gosh, my throat is still bothering me. Oh, it's my pleasure, Patrick. I'm glad I was able to answer your questions. My channel is about not only composting, it's about breeding the worms, and it's about educating you all and helping you troubleshoot any problems, and showing you the things that I do and the mistakes that I do so you don't do them, because trust me, I have made a ton of mistakes. I have, but I've also learned a lot from them. And it's better to use castings in your garden than these chemical fertilizers, that can do harm to you, your plants, your animals, everything. So this channel is all about education. And I've always loved it that way, and I'll keep it that way. So I think I'm going to end this soon. We'll stay on like another 10 minutes or so. And then I'm going to end it, and I am going to go spend the evening with my family. So if you guys have any last minute questions, let me know. What else would you want to see from the lives? You're very welcome, Tracy. It's my pleasure. I'm glad you learned. I'm glad you guys are learning things. I don't come on live often, but I will, as long as it helps you all. I will come on. And again, if you're not subscribed yet, press that subscribe channel. You know, it's free to subscribe. People have asked me, does it cost money to subscribe to YouTube like a channel? No. It only costs money if you upgrade to have like the ads removed or something. But no, the subscription is free. And the ads the ads that run on my channel are monetization for me. It just helps me with the channel. YouTube decides to run ads. I don't pick them. They just do that for me. You know, I don't have any control over that, but I'm grateful for it. Maybe next time we go live, we'll be in the worm room itself. Would you guys like to see that? All right. Well, I'm going to end this. So again, thank you for coming. Thank you for your comments. Thank you for your thumbs up. Thank you for your super chats. I really appreciate it. Any other questions, leave down below and I will answer them. And I'll be back in the next video. And I'll see you all next time. Take care. Bye.